Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 391 of the All Dolphins podcast. Let me center myself here. Here we go. On this Friday, October 25th, 2024, on a wild, crazy, freaky Friday in Dolphin land with a whole bunch of news, some good, some bad, some crazy roster moves to a clearing concussion protocol. There's a ton to get to. So let's dive into it. Don't even know where to start. There's so much happening. We'll start with the biggest news, not unexpected, but Tua Tagovailoa officially clearing concussion protocol. This technically happened Thursday after practice, after he went through his first full practice since the concussion of September 12th against the Buffalo Bills. No issues. This is kind of the way it had been trending for a while, so no surprise there. However, just want to point out, if you see pictures of the final injury report for Week 8 between the Miami Dolphins and the Arizona Cardinals, you will see Tua Tagovailoa listed as questionable after limited full in terms of his practice participation this week. This is because, per NFL rules, as long as a player remains on IR, which Tua currently is, he will be listed as questionable. Mike McDaniel's already solved the mystery or cleared any confusion that possibly could have existed. Tua Tagovailoa will be starting at quarterback for the Dolphins against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday at 1 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium. Now, so why isn't he on the active roster just yet? Because the Dolphins don't have to make that move. They could make that move anytime they want, but they're waiting until Saturday at 4 p.m., which is usually when you'll see that move. It will have to come and be accompanied by a corresponding roster move because Tua going on the 53 requires a spot. The Dolphins are at 53 right now. What's going to happen with that spot? There's a lot of possibilities. We're going to dive into those once we discuss the roster moves that were made Friday because they involve another quarterback. So, again, no major surprise there. Too good and ready to go. Don't know what else can be said about Tua that hasn't already been said. The Dolphin offense obviously is going to operate and look a lot different with Tua at quarterback than Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley, Tim Boyle, or even possibly CJ Beathard, who, if he ever gets into the lineup at some point, the newcomer on the practice squad. So this obviously is good news for the Dolphins. Let's go to the rest of the injury report since we're here on that one. The Dolphins ruled out two players on Friday, including Zach Sieler, and this is where we're going to go to a sidebar again and talk about Zach Sieler, what happened. And it's interesting because the beat writers all were asking about different players and their injury status. And then I threw in, after a lot of the players had been mentioned, what about Sieler? Is there any reason for concern? Thinking he'd been poked in the eye. Usually those things not necessarily that serious. And then this is when Mike McDaniel kind of dropped a bomb on us, basically telling us he's not playing against the Arizona Cardinals week to week, timeline unknown. And then we come to find out later on from the good folks at NFL Network, specifically Cameron Wolf, good guy, good reporter, who is based in South Florida, reported along with Ian Rappaport that Sieler suffered a fractured orbital bone right here. Further tests will be done to evaluate or determine the severity of the injury. Possible that surgery could be required. Obviously, that would keep Sieler out of action longer. This is a major, major deal for the Dolphin defense. And you knock on wood that it's not going to be a long-term absence, because I'm here to tell you that because of the position he plays, because of the talent around him or besides him at that position, Zach Sieler is either the first or second Dolphin player in terms of his importance for this defense. The only one who would rank next to him or above him would be Jalen Ramsey. Why? Well, number one is Sieler plays a lot of snaps. He's at 79% of the defensive snaps so far this season. Last 3 years at 78, 79, 77. Correct. Those three numbers, 77, 78, 79 in terms of the defensive snaps. And not only that he plays a lot, he plays really well. The dude is a player. It was interesting. His wife, Hannah Sieler, put out on Twitter last week after his fumble recovery against the Indianapolis Colts, something along the lines of how long does it take to get out of the underrated circle? I think people who know football know that Zach Sieler is a damn good football player. I don't know. And if he is underrated, I think it's lack of exposure, lack of national attention. It was easy to overlook him the past couple of years playing alongside Christian Wilkins, because Christian Wilkins has a loud personality. When he makes a play, you know it. When he doesn't make a play, sometimes you know it. Very exuberant out there, whereas Zach is a lot more mellow, subdued. So perhaps he got lost in the shuffle because of that. But that dude can play. And it's not just this year. It's pretty much since he joined the Dolphins as a waiver claim from the Baltimore Ravens in December of 2019. And, of course, it would go that it would take a freaky accident like this to make him miss a game when he hadn't missed a game before for the Dolphins. Played 3 games in December 2019, plays all 16 in 2020, and in all 17 once the regular season, switches 17 games in 2021, 22, and 23. And this year had the first 6 games. So that's a major problem. And a lot of concern as to how long he's going to be out. Although I do take a little bit of encouragement from the fact that his wife, Hannah, put out a tweet on social media basically suggesting that the new Dolphin defensive drill would be for the Dolphin defensive players or defensive line drill to do this so as to prevent the poking of the eye, the old Three Stooges thing. So if his situation was very serious, not 100% sure that she would be making light of it. Or maybe it's a coping mechanism. I don't know. I'd be tempted to lean toward the fact that maybe it's not terribly or overly severe and that hopefully Zach can be back sooner rather than later. The other issue, along with the fact that he's a snap eater and he's very good, is the Dolphins don't have a ton of other proven talent at the position other than Calais Campbell. But Calais Campbell is 38 years old, generally plays high 30s in the number of snaps. Spoke to reporters after practice on Friday, said he's kind of ready for the idea of playing more snaps. But at 38 years old, you have to wonder and question whether the effectiveness goes down with each additional snap once you reach a certain level. That's just a fact of life. Beyond that, Deshaun Hanna has been a solid player. But again, this is a guy who plays 35, 36 snaps. How many snaps can he handle? There are not a ton of guys who play the number of snaps that Zach Sieler plays on the interior of the defensive line. Christian Wilkins was one of those guys. There are a few others as well. The 2 guys in Washington from last year, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, who's now on IR, are also guys who play a lot of snaps, but not every interior defensive lineman can do that. So who else is there beyond that? Well, the rest of the defensive line includes Brandon Peely, the second-year player, who doesn't get a lot of playing time, and then Benito Jones, a tackle, back to the Dolphins from the Detroit Lions, who is more of a pure nose tackle, doesn't play a ton of snaps. So what's going to happen is the Dolphins more than likely going to elevate. They're going to use one of their 2 practice squad elevations on a defensive tackle. They had Neil Farrell Jr., who's more of a pure nose tackle, already on the practice squad. And on Friday, they added Matt Dickerson, who's got, did it before. And again, all of this is documented on Miami Dolphins on SI.com. Please check out the website. Got 9 stories on there today, all detailed and expounding on what I'm going to be saying out here on this old podcast. So please, it's a combination deal. Do both. I appreciate and love you guys who watch the podcast on a regular basis. I love the people who check out the stories on the website. I adore the people who do both. I mean, requires, there you go, the massive hearts. For those listening on the audio version of the podcast, I'm doing the arts on my MacBook Pro, the floating hearts. So the best guess is Matt Dickerson is a player whose style and skill set would fit more what Zach Sieler gives the Dolphins. However, the Dolphins just got him now. He's got time with the Tennessee Titans, played 12 games for the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe it's 32 games in his 7 NFL seasons, no starts, played 12 games for the Chiefs last year, bouncing up and down the practice squad, was cut this year, signed to the practice squad August 28th, released from the practice squad August 31st. Hadn't been on the team since then. So, and again, he was signed on Friday. The chances he's going to be in the lineup on Sunday, pretty small. Best guess, Dolphins will be elevating Neil Farrell Jr. Who else will they be elevating? And we'll be back here tomorrow around 4 p.m. to break it all down. My guess is going to be Matt Overton because the Dolphins are going to need a long snapper unless they sign him to the 53-man roster, which certainly is a possibility. Then, of course, that would create another roster move that they would have to make another opening that they would have to create. So, and the other part of the Zach Sieler absence, that's not ideal, is it comes against a team whose biggest strength offensively probably is interior running. That's the Cardinals with James Conner. Had 101 yards rushing Monday night against the LA Chargers, who had been good against the run. Added 51 through the air, but it's the running game that's a little bit of a concern. The Dolphins' run defense hadn't been great all season to begin with, and Zach Sieler is probably their best run defender. So this is problematic from that standpoint. It becomes a lot more tricky for the Dolphin defense to be able to contain and neutralize the Arizona offense. On the flip side, and again, this is a day of full good news, bad news. On the flip side, this is happening. The Dolphins will get 2 defensive starters back for this game. Linebacker Emmanuel Ogbah, safety Javon Holland. They both missed a game against the Colts last Sunday because of their injuries. They are listed on the injury report without a game status designation, which means they're good to go. The Dolphins will be shorthanded in the secondary because Kader Koh, who's got a neck injury, already has been ruled out, and Storm Duck, who is dealing with an ankle injury, is listed as doubtful. And nowadays, you see a player listed as doubtful, generally speaking, it means he's not playing. Dolphins do have Cam Smith now available for the first time all year after they activated him off IR earlier this week. He figures to get into the lineup, possibly Ethan Bonner as well, to join Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, Ethan Bonner, Saran Neal. And I think I repeated Ethan Bonner, and I'm missing one here. I'm going to be very, very disappointed in myself because I can't think of who it is right now. But the Dolphins, I believe, still will have 6 or 5, at least 5 cornerbacks on the active roster, so they will not need to elevate anybody from the practice squad. The rest of the injury report, Zach Sieler obviously is out. We mentioned Tua Tagovailoa being questionable because he has to be. And then Tyreek Hill also listed as questionable. However, Mike McDaniel said before practice he was optimistic that both he and Jalen Waddle, who's been dealing with a quad injury, would be available to play. Turns out Waddle was a full participant in practice, removed from the injury report. He is good to go. Hill did not practice, which is troubling on the one sense. On the other hand, this is a guy, again, not like Tyreek Hill, needs a ton of practice here. He practiced full on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday before he got injured. And very possible that the idea was, let's not put any undue strain on his foot at practice on Friday. He's listed as questionable. I would say it's probably a better than 50-50 shot he does wind up playing in this particular game. The roster moves. We mentioned I'm going to take a swig of my iced coffee here. In addition to signing Matt Dickerson to the practice squad, the Dolphins placed quarterback Tyler Huntley on injured reserve, and then they signed from the practice squad to the active roster wide receiver D. Eskridge. Eskridge will become the 5th wide receiver on the roster, basically taking the place of Braxton Berrios, who was placed on injured reserve earlier this week. When the Dolphins activated Cam Smith, of course, Berrios sustained a torn ACL in the game against the Colts when he went to make a cut while returning a kickoff, and then the knee gave out. And I know a lot of fans like to rag on Braxton Berrios, but if you look at the stats, for example, as a punt returner, average is 14.7, does not have enough returns to qualify among the league leaders. If he did, he'd be first. So this notion, again, I don't get all the hate for Braxton Berrios. Maybe he doesn't get not gotten any targets in the passing game. He's not necessarily a burner, but he's very effective as a returner. Best guess, Malik Washington will be handling the punt returns. D. Eskridge, who has experience returning kickoffs through his first 4 years, 3 in the NFL, 3 with the Seattle Seahawks, and then the 2 games he played with the Dolphins, including one at Seattle in week 3 when he did return a kickoff, and that was good for 28 yards. So the best guess is Eskridge will be the kickoff returner. As for Tyler, and Eskridge had been elevated twice. You kind of need 4 wide receivers on an active roster. Is an awfully low number. Dolphins were going to have to elevate him one more time and then have to make the move to put him on the 53 because you're only allowed 3 elevations per player. So it made this move kind of made sense, not shocking. And I think it may certainly make a statement on the status of Eric Ezukama, because this is a guy who was their 2022 4th-round pick. And Eskridge was elevated over him one time with him. And the Dolphins had 2 injuries at wide receiver before Beckham came back. And now he's the one who gets the nod on the 53, and that is Ezukama. That kind of tells you all you need to know that Eric Ezukama. I don't know. I don't know if I want to say that that ship has sailed, but I think we should resign ourselves to the fact that it's possible that there will never be any kind of significant contribution from the aforementioned Eric Ezukama. Now, as far as Huntley is concerned, the Dolphins had 5 quarterbacks on their roster, and I'm including Tua, even though he was and still is on injured reserve, because, again, by Saturday at 4 p.m., he will be moved to the 53, which will give the Dolphins, after the move of Huntley, 4 quarterbacks, 3 on the active roster, Tua, Skylar Thompson, and Tim Boyle, along with the aforementioned C.J. Beathard on the practice squad. Would not necessarily be surprised if the Dolphins made another move before too long, that move being releasing Tim Boyle. I can certainly see a scenario where the Dolphins would go on with Tua as the starter, Skylar Thompson as the backup, C.J. Beathard on the practice squad, can be elevated if needed as the emergency 3rd quarterback. I think and then maybe at some point he'll replace Tim Boyle as the number 3 quarterback, based on what McDaniel told us about C.J. Beathard, how he likes the guy, the familiarity with him from their time in San Francisco. I think C.J. Beathard's probably a much better bet to be on the roster in a month or 2 than Tim Boyle. For tomorrow, very possible Dolphins won't make a move with the quarterback position, and then just leave it as Tua number 1, Skylar number 2, Tim Boyle as the emergency 3rd quarterback, just to protect themselves in case of issues. And certainly, knock on wood, the last thing the Dolphins want to see is to have to deal with injuries at quarterback in Tua's return. Now, this is my prediction because I asked Mike McDaniel very specifically before practice Friday if he had settled on the backup quarterback for the game against the Cardinals, and he said he had a pretty good idea but wanted to see how practice played out to make a final determination. And I am going to go ahead and say it again. How and why it wasn't completely set at the time, it's Skylar. He was on number 2 coming into the regular season. It's a little weird to me, but again, I don't know. Maybe I'm not that sharp, and then there's something obvious that I'm missing, but I honestly don't get it. Just like I don't get how it wasn't on Wednesday when he was asked the same question, how the answer wasn't, Skylar's a number 2 guy if he's healthy. Again, this is a guy you've carried on the roster for 3 years. He entered the season as your number 2, did have a mediocre to poor performance in his 1 start in week 3 after Tua was injured. But still, this is a guy, again, you groomed for 3 years. So who knows? And we may not know this until exactly what's going to happen until after the game on Sunday or at game time, when we'll see when the inactives come out. We'll see what's what. And then we're going to close it out with the news that came out on Friday morning. It involves season ticket members getting a letter from the Dolphins informing them that the NFL had told the Dolphins, you're playing an international game in 2025, so you will get 8 home games instead of what was supposed to be 9, because next year in the rotation between AFC and NFC, it's the AFC that has 9 home games. Where will that game be? Well, the Dolphins have international marketing rights in Mexico, in England, in Spain, and in Brazil. And Roger Goodell basically indicated there would be games there next year. The hope was that they're going back to Brazil for a second year. They're definitely playing a game in Spain for the first time ever, and the hope is they're going to go back to Mexico. Dolphins are the only team in the NFL that has international marketing rights to Spain, or marketing rights to Spain, I should say, which would seem to suggest that that's where they'll play. It's not necessarily a done deal. It could be Brazil. There's only 2 teams who have marketing rights to Brazil. It's the Dolphins and the New England Patriots. And if the Patriots go 3-14 in 2024, it may be that the good folks in Brazil are going to say, can we get the Dolphins instead of the Patriots? And then the NFL would just send 2 teams without international marketing rights to play the game in Spain. So opponent, location, date of the game, obviously to be announced at a later date by the NFL. And in fact, the official announcement for the NFL that the Dolphins will play a game internationally in 2025 has not been made yet. This is the Dolphins beginning the process by alerting their season ticket members that it's coming. So that'll be interesting. Dolphins, of course, are no strangers. They played 6 games in London. They played 1 in Germany last year against the Kansas City Chiefs. They played 1 in Toronto, Canada in 2008 when the Bills played a couple of home games there. And the Dolphins won that year 16-3 on their way to the AFC East title, which sadly is the last time the Dolphins win the AFC East title. Right now, it's about getting back into playoff contention for the Dolphins, who are 2-4, hoping to get things back on track. So this recaps a crazy, crazy wild Friday. There will be more. There will be moves to be made, elevations to be made on Saturday. I'll be back here to give you the rundown and everything it means. Again, beyond that, please check out the website, MiamiDolphinsOnSI.com. Please like, subscribe, share the podcast here. Much appreciated. Love every one of you guys. Remember, and if you do both, I adore you. And my hearts are not showing up here. There we go. The hearts are showing up. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks again for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.